And it's great to be back here with you on Shabbat Ki Teitzei. So 10 years ago, this Shabbat in the Jewish calendar, I was long-haired, and my hair is already pretty long, but I mean really long. I'm talking Justin Bieber long, at least Justin Bieber the way he used to be. A long-haired, recently braces-free young Jewish boy, and I was sitting next to one of those, or I was sitting on one of those high-backed chairs you can see sometimes on the bima of synagogues, and sitting next to me was my cantor Kevin Mortel, and I had been close with him my whole life, but over the course of my training over those months, he had become a close mentor and confidant for me. You guessed it, Ki Teitzei was my bar mitzvah portion. And I was leading at the time my very first Shabbat service on my own and reading my very first, aliyot from the Torah on my own. For those of us who've had a bat or bar mitzvah ceremony, you understand what kind of pressure that experience can put on a young person. Now imagine how much that pressure was compounded when I found out that one of the laws, one of the mitzvot that's contained in this portion deals with the wayward and disobedient son. Needless to say, my parents had a lot of fun with this during the months of my preparation for my bar mitzvah. The law itself is really harsh. It's pretty harsh, both in terms of the process by which one is tried for the offense and the sentence which will be carried out if your guilt is confirmed. Ki la'ish bein sorer u'moreh Einenu shomea bekol aviv uvechol imo visru oto velo yishma alehem. If a man has a wayward and rebellious son who does not obey his father or his mother, and they chasten him, I don't know how to pronounce that word, chasten. They chasten him, and he still does not listen to them, his father and his mother shall take hold of him, grab him, right? Bring him out to the elders of his city and to the gate of his town, and they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He does not obey us. He is a glutton and a guzzler. And all the men of his city shall pelt him to death with stones, and he shall die. So shall you clear out the evil from among you, and all Israel will listen and be afraid. So for the daughters in our congregation, how pumped are you, am I right? You get off scot-free. But seriously, for the sons in our kihila, those young and those who have since grown up, how do we feel about this proclamation? For the parents of sons in our congregation, what kind of paradigm does this set up between you as parents and your son? So if you break down this process, it's truly shocking. There's, first of all, no minimum set in the Torah for how many times the parents would have to chasten their kid. It could, as far as we know from the text as it is, it could have been the first offense, and all of a sudden, nope, we're bringing you to the elders of the town. Second, the fact that it's the parents of the child who are essentially prosecuting against their own son before the elders, knowing full well the punishment that's on the line, is incredibly troubling. What parent could ever imagine taking their own kid to court and prosecuting against them? And then lastly, the carrying out of the sentence itself. Stoning is a horrifying way to imagine one's end. And for our sons, those of us who would have been subjected to that sentence, our legacy then is only confirmed as evil. An evil that's been washed away from Israel's midst. For what? One time of being wayward and rebellious? Luckily, the rabbis come to the rescue of our collective morality and conscience. In Sifrei Deuteronomy, which is one of the classical works of halachic midrash on Jewish law, midrash on the mitzvot in the Torah, the rabbis delineate a series of limitations on the law. First of all, it must be a son and not a daughter because it's specified that way. Then, they must have been reprimanded several times already. The rabbis add that minimum set of, I think the rabbis say 3 times minimum of being reprimanded before being brought before the elders. Additionally, because the law in the Torah prescribes that the mother and the father bring the child before the elders, if you don't have a mother or you don't have a father, you can't carry out the mitzvah, that you can't be brought before the elders. And additionally, if your parents are afflicted by some kind of injury or lameness where they can't physically take you, they don't have the strength or the ability to physically take the kid before the elders, or they're blind or deaf or mute, then again, the son is not subject to the law. And finally, the kicker to all this rabbinic discourse actually comes from a different rabbinic text from Talmud Sanhedrin, in which it was taught, Rabbi Shimon said, because this one ate some meat and drank some wine, his father and mother lead him out to be stoned? Rather, it never happened, and it never will happen. Basically, he's saying there's never been a reported case of this law actually being carried out, and it never will happen in the future because it's nearly impossible to justify this kind of action. Which is actually really striking because it's coming from an Orthodox Talmudic rabbi basically saying a law, hold on. From an Orthodox rabbi, a law in the Torah isn't exactly literal as prescribed? Fascinating. This shows us that some laws in the Torah are really more cautionary parables than they are legitimate legal prescription. While the wayward son may never be taken out and stoned to death, the law is there to remind our young people of the heavy consequences which come with being a person devoid of morals or principles, or at least a person who's overly self-indulgent. But it also speaks to the parents of our communities, reminding them to be willing to bend with their children, remembering that sometimes the harshest punishment we can concoct for our children's misdeeds might not be the most effective. And so with that, we turn to our